Hi, everyone. Okay, perfect. It's working great. I was just going to say if it seems to be a little slow, then I might have to stop my video, but everything seems to be working well. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming to the second webinar of our series. We're hoping to do a couple more as well. And so our first webinar, we talked about smart accounts. So today we're going to be focusing a little bit more on smart licensing, but as always, we'll start with the HTLE team and our scope. We'll talk about traditional licensing versus smart licensing, the benefits there, and kind of why we moved to smart licensing. We'll get a little bit more in depth with managing the licenses themselves, and pretty excited to be able to show you and do a demo of the actual portals. So we'll do a little bit of the smart account portal, but today we'll mainly focus on the smart licensing portal, hoping to give you enough information to be a little bit more helpful to your clients and to understand what they're talking about when they come up with some troubleshooting questions there. And then, as always, we'll tell you a little bit more in terms of how to engage our teams and additional support channels, as well as other teams within the licensing ecosystem. So if we have enough time, we might try to answer some questions, but I know sometimes it gets a little too close to the end time. So if we're not able to answer your questions right away, please, again, feel free to go ahead and join our chat space. We have some wonderful resources there. And also feel free to reach out to me as well. I'll do my best to be able to answer all in any questions that I get there. So for those of you, and I know that a lot of people here are new to our team, it was great seeing the registration. We are the High Touch Licensing Experience team. And so we are part of the licensing ecosystem, but we're a non-transactional, non-technical team. And so our goal is essentially to make clients a little bit more self-sufficient and self-reliant when it comes to licenses. And our scope definitely varies and our client engagements vary, but we do this primarily through education and training sessions with our clients. So each engagement looks a little differently. If you look over to the right-hand side with the customer types as well as engagement length, it really does vary. We don't cater to one specific client or one specific size. And we really try to make sure that your client gets anything and everything out of each of our engagements. And so if it's something that's a one shot, they only want a best practices sessions because they're pretty well knowledgeable about smart account, smart licensing. One and done, that's totally fine. And if it's a client that's a little bit more new, they're doing onboarding, maybe they haven't seen some of the other portals as well, those engagements are going to be a little bit longer. So it really just depends on the clients and what they're looking to get out of it. Additionally, to tell you a little bit more about our team, so we have about 20 members globally. So we are a global team. We don't just cater here to the Americas. We support a couple different languages. So as of right now, we support 4 different languages: English, Japanese, Spanish, and French. And we are not a new team. So for those of you who haven't worked with us, or maybe have just heard about our team through another colleague or coworker who has worked with us, we've done over 3,000 engagements, and that number is rising every single day. We get new requests every single day. Always happy to go ahead and tackle some new situations and things that definitely come up. As you can see here as well, our customer satisfaction score is 99.1%, so it's pretty high. So we really enjoy working with a variety of clients and looking forward to working with each and every one of you as well. The other thing I do want to point out is that our response time, we try to respond within 24 hours. Oftentimes it'll be much quicker than that. I know after the last webinar, we had folks putting in requests right away, and I saw my colleagues pick up and start working with clients, pretty much within days. So I'm really excited there. Aside from, talking a little bit about our team itself, so our scope, this is kind of our main breadth of what we do cover. So we help clients, from foundational training, doing the onboarding, so foundational smart accounts, smart licensing, talking to them about CCOIDs and how that's different from smart accounts, and kind of putting the puzzle pieces together to really get them started on a great foot. Aside from that, we do smart accounts and smart licensing demos, and you'll get a taste of that today. Guidance and best practices as well for clients that have used smart accounts, or maybe they're way more familiar with the traditional licensing portal LRP and are quick to understand the technical concepts and utilizing the new portals as well quickly. So we can do that as well. Aside from that, if it requires a little bit more analysis, it's a little bit more unique to your client, we will do smart account analysis, We'll take a look at their structure, so their virtual account structure, give recommendations in terms of how they can consolidate it or restructure it. As we talked about in our last webinar, the virtual account structure is a great way for your clients to go ahead and maintain and organize their smart account. So it's good to get that going on the get-go, but also it's great to go ahead and revisit that every once in a while. Licensing, conversion, and migration. So this is a really hot topic, especially as Cisco is moving from traditional licensing to smart licensing, and from smart licensing to something called smart licensing using policy as well. So if there is something that I talk about today that you've never heard, do not fret. We have some upcoming sessions as well, and hopefully we'll be able to do a little bit more in-depth conversations on those areas as well. But licensing conversion and migration conversations are definitely one of the hot topics right now that my colleagues and I are working with clients on. Aside from that, we also do high-level overviews of the MC portals, EAs, SLP, demos, and best practices. And this can also include things like different deployment methods, so the SSM on-prem versus offline air-gapped, and recommendations there as well. There's some other teams, especially within the EA. So we work really closely with our portfolio activation specialist teams who are the experts with EA. But if you need just a basic refresher or maybe just have a couple offhand questions there, we can definitely help out there. And then training on new license features. So I know Cisco often does listen to, customer reviews and customer feedback. And as a team, we're always asking for that as well. And so when we find out about new licensing features, we definitely incorporate that into our education sessions. But we like to let you know as well. And then strategic questions and utilizing support channels. So a lot of this is things that we talked about last webinar. I definitely do want to reiterate this for the new folks. And then these are just some examples of questions. You'll get the slides as well, so don't feel like you have to read anything and everything. But some of the things that we do get a lot of times are questions with alerts or questions with license inventory or maybe missing licenses. And so these are all things that we can help out with. This isn't an exhaustive list, by the way. We do help out with a lot more, but it's just good to know that this is a base understanding of what we do. And if you ever have any questions about scope, feel free to raise a request or reach out to one of us, and we'd be happy to kind of explain again what we do. Again, we are a non-transactional and non-technical team. So although we don't actually focus on particular products or particular license types, we do like to recommend to our clients and guide our clients in the right directions. And so we work closely with, our TAC team and our licensing operations team, so GLOW and L2 and L3. And since they're separate teams, we're not the right team to go ahead and help you escalate, but we may be able to provide recommendations in terms of the best way to escalate a current case that you have with them. So those are things that are outside of our scope. Requests or escalations with the EA and True Forward as well are things that we don't cover. And again, technical or specific transactional things as well. But we won't leave you hanging. We will always, do our best to recommend and guide you to the right place and the right team, just so that you can keep progressing towards helping your client figure out what they need. So to get started on the licensing piece. So for those of you who weren't at the last session, we talked a little bit about traditional licensing and what that looked like prior to smart accounts. And the main idea there is that each of these orders were tied to individual users via their CCID. So as you can see, Bob and Company A has put in a purchase order, and James and Company A has also put in a purchase order, but since they don't communicate with each other and they don't talk to each other, no one on either of their teams know that they have purchased those devices and or licenses. And then it gets a little more complex as well when you're utilizing different partners. And so as a company, we couldn't tell them what they owned just because it was tied to individual users. And if one of those users left, well, then their own company would have a hard time tracking that. So this was because traditional licenses are node locked to specific devices and use something called a product activation key or a PAC. So in order to register a traditional device, you would have to have your claim certificate, which could be given electronically or maybe delivered physically as well. And then you would use that claim certificate to get the PAC and then to get the license file and put the license file on the device itself. And if your device needed multiple license files, then you'd have to manually, set that up with the device. And that's okay if you have one device, maybe 2 devices, 5 devices. But when you're talking about hundreds of devices, it was definitely a really manual process. And this would have to be repeated as well when it came to renewals. So there wasn't an easy way to go ahead and renew the licenses on the devices automatically. So moving from traditional licensing, we moved towards smart licensing as well as smart accounts. And so in the ordering and the quoting process, a smart account can be assigned. And your smart account is, again, that giant container tied to your organization. And so as long as your smart account is being assigned, those licenses go, the order provisioning goes through and the licenses are deposited. Anyone with access to the smart account and their particular roles that gives them visibility into the entirety of the smart account will know that they have those licenses there. And so that's across the entire company, as well as when you're utilizing different partners as well. So it really simplifies the process. It also makes the registration process a lot easier because instead of, having that specific license for that specific device, now clients can just use a non-product specific registration token to go ahead and easily register their device to the CSSM, which is that smart licensing portal. So it's a lot more flexible. We'll talk about some of the benefits as we continue to go on. So with smart accounts, there are two main types. We did cover a lot of this in the previous session, so I encourage you to go ahead and check that out. I will stick to the high-level review just to make sure that we have enough time to focus on a lot of the new information on smart licensing. But there are two main smart account types: customer smart account, partner holding account as well. And the partner holding account is just a temporary storage area for licenses. They actually can't be consumed there, but it's an area to go ahead and hold the licenses when the partner doesn't exactly know which smart account or maybe which particular virtual account the client wants those licenses deposited to. So this customer smart account is what your customers will be using to go ahead and consume licenses, register devices, and all that good stuff. Aside from that, they can go ahead and structure it a little bit more using virtual accounts. Create a request, talk to one of our teammates to dive into the virtual account structure a little bit more. And if you want to, definitely check out our last webinar to go a little bit more in detail on the virtual accounts as well. One thing that I do want to talk about really quickly are user roles. And so these are the main user roles that we currently have in the CSSM. So you have your smart account approver, which is the person that can go ahead and approve legal agreements on behalf of the organization. You have your smart account admin, which has full visibility as well as full access to licensing transactions and user management transactions. And then your smart account user that has full visibility, but focuses only on the licensing transactions. The virtual account admin, that's similar to the smart account admin, but it's focused particularly on specific virtual accounts. So they can do both licensing transactions and user management transactions. And then the virtual account user, which focuses solely on licensing transactions. So depending on what your client needs their users to have, it's really important to set this up correctly on the start, but if they have to change that, the system's flexible enough for them to go ahead and change it instead of having to remove people and add people again. And one thing that I do want to note, we had a lot of questions after our last webinar in terms of how Cisco internals can get access to their clients' smart accounts. And unfortunately, we don't have the ability to go ahead and grant access. That's something that has to come from the client itself. And so if you do want access to your customer's smart account, we do recommend reaching out to their smart account administrator, and they can go ahead and easily add you with the CCU ID. Back to smart accounts, talking about why it's important. Smart accounts essentially use that flexible pooling concept that I was talking about. And so instead of the visibility or lack of visibility, I should say, with the traditional licenses, it allows everything to be in one place and for the clients to understand what licenses that they have that can be utilized, as well as what they're currently using and the devices that are consuming those licenses. And that kind of introduces this idea of compliance. And so one of the things that you'll probably get a lot from your customers is, I see these alerts. I see that my device is out of compliance, or I see this alert for license insufficiencies. And oftentimes they get a little flustered, or maybe they're just a little confused in terms of what that means. And so hopefully, with our session today, we'll alleviate some of that confusion for you, and you can explain to your clients as well, or again, bring us on board to do a little bit more in-depth sessions with your clients. So when it comes to compliance, a lot of that is connectivity with devices, as well as license insufficiencies. So here you can see that customer 1 has purchased 2 Advantage licenses. and they have registered one device that consumes one Advantage license. And because they're using less than the licenses they actually have in their CSSM, then their device, as long as it's connecting and properly communicating with the CSSM, it's still in compliance. If you had, let's say, 2 additional devices that your client was registering, and now their devices would use 3 Advantage licenses, it allows, the compliance allows your clients to go ahead and either put in a new purchase order or go ahead and move licenses from a different virtual account into the virtual account that the devices are currently registered in. And that's because of that flexible pooling concept. So it gives a little bit of gap time for them to go ahead and move things around. And again, as long as everything is within one smart account, the licenses can be moved pretty easily, as well as the devices too. So we always encourage your clients to go ahead and stick with one smart account. If it's cross smart accounts, it's a little bit more tricky. It can be done, but that would have to go through licensing operations and some of our customer support teams as well. So there are a couple of myths that I do want to share. And these are some, misconceptions that that clients tend to have and ask us in the beginning of, our starting of their onboarding and foundational training sessions. And so oftentimes clients from the get-go, they confuse smart licensing, smart accounts, as well as CCIDs. And so smart licenses refers to those licenses themselves. Smart accounts are that giant container that licenses can be deposited in, devices can be registered in.
Sorry to be in a bad mood.
Is focused on particular users. So those are just a couple of things to be aware of. And they might use it interchangeably. It's easier to kind of explain from the get-go. And if you hear them slip up, just explain to them, because they might confuse other colleagues of theirs as well. Additionally, there were some concerns about, polling networks, as well as data that might be shared with Cisco unknowingly from the client's end. And we just want to make sure that and you can also explain to your clients that the communications aren't ever initiated by Cisco. And as well, there are only particular pieces of information, very specific pieces of information, things like serial number, account number, and product ID that gets sent back to Cisco for the purposes of compliance, things like that. Aside from that, this is a great way to understand the entirety of the workflow. So it starts with ordering smart licenses, as well as, and so that can happen on the CCW, which is the Cisco Commerce Workspace, or it could be through something called an enterprise agreement, and the licenses are generated on the EA Workspace. So there are a couple different ways licenses can be ordered and or generated. And as long as the smart account is assigned, then once that order goes through or the licenses are generated, you'll be able to see those in the CSSM. And so that is your smart licensing portal. Once the licenses are there, it's a good indicator that your clients can go ahead and register their devices using that non-product specific registration token. And then it'll go ahead and consume the license and again, show you whether or not it's in compliance or out of compliance. So we're getting to the best part, which is the portal demo. And I know a lot of you don't actually have access to your client's smart account. So this is helpful in terms of understanding what that looks like for your clients. So this is the Cisco Software Central, which is the main landing page when it comes to smart accounts and smart licensing. So you'll go ahead and your clients will go ahead and log in here using their CCID. And once they log in, they'll be able to see their smart account that they have access to. If they have access to multiple smart accounts, they'll see this little drop-down arrow and they'll be able to toggle between a couple of them. And then down here, these are the 2 main portals that we're going to be talking about today. Here we have your Smart Software Manager. So this is the CSSM. This is where the licenses are, the licenses are deposited and can be utilized. And then your Managed Smart Account portal is where administrators will be able to do things like create virtual accounts, look at users, and all that good stuff. So first, we'll take a look at the Managed Smart Account portal. So one thing that I do want to say before getting into this is that your view may look a little different, as well as your client's view may look a little different than what you're seeing here today. And that's because of the internal roles as well as specific user roles. So this isn't going to be exactly what your clients see. So just want to give you a little bit of information there. Account information, account properties is great to know more about the smart account itself. So things like the domain, if that needs to be changed, then you can use the help of our customer support teams to go ahead and change those out. But this tab right here is not utilized all that often by your clients. Primarily, they'll focus on virtual accounts, users, and then requests and event logs. So this shows you the current structure that's built out. We're using a test account today. And so it's definitely a little bit messy, but it's a great indicator in terms of what you can do within the account itself and what that can particularly look like. And also a great reminder of why it's important to go ahead and have your clients check this every once in a while, just to make sure things aren't too messy or too simple for their own setup. So again, you can have that flat structure of virtual accounts, or you could have nested virtual accounts as well. And it'll give you more information in terms of what's the default virtual account, as well as any on-prem accounts. So the on-prem is one of those deployment methods, and you'll see on-prem accounts indicated by this icon here. Aside from the virtual accounts, you might get questions from your clients about particular users who has access to their account. So any of the admins will be able to go ahead and come in here and see the users, CCIDs, email addresses, as well as the full access that they have. And so it'll show whether or not they have access to the entirety of the smart account as an admin or a user, or if they only have selective access as a virtual account admin or a virtual account user. Aside from that, the request tab is one of those areas that you'll probably get questions about. And so for clients that want to see who has requested access to their smart account, they'll be able to do that here. So if your client is a little bit more focused on their users generating and initiating that access versus admins adding people, they'll want to use this to go ahead and approve users as well as grant them specific access. And then we're going to move to the managed licensing portal, which is that smart licensing portal. So one new thing that has recently come about, and we've been getting questions a lot, is a view-only role. Typically, it's with partners as well. And also, we do work with partners. We do these education sessions with partners, but it's something that has to be initiated from a Cisco internal. So we don't take requests from clients directly or requests from external partners directly. So that's something to know. But like I said before, we do update you on, new licensing changes, as well as portal changes, and that view-only role is something that a lot of folks have been asking for in the past and will be delivered soon. So I'm pretty excited about that. Here in the Smart Licensing portal, so we'll start with the Alerts tab. So the Alerts tab is one of those things that may cause your clients a little bit more worried when they see the title Alerts. Oftentimes they think something's absolutely wrong, and that's not always the case. This is just good information for them to know. And so in terms of the different types of alerts, there are 3 of them. So major alerts are the ones, the most important ones that your client wants to focus on. And it requires some sort of action or some sort of transaction to go ahead and remove or dismiss. So things like insufficient licenses, maybe this particular virtual account doesn't have the licenses, but it's stored in another virtual account. So if you move the licenses from the virtual account with excess licenses into this virtual account, then this alert will go away. With the minor and the informational alerts, those fortunately can be dismissed. And so you can go ahead and dismiss them in bulk by, expanding the amount of licenses, filtering out by license type, and then going ahead and clicking this and available actions and dismiss. So this is one of those areas that does cause clients a little bit of worry, but once they understand what it means and how to kind of read through the alerts tab, a lot of them feel a lot better. And they find it a lot more informational, just in general, just to make sure that they understand the health of their licensing portal. Aside from the alerts, the inventory tab is going to be the area where your clients will mainly focus on. So I've already selected into the default account. Your default account will be indicated by this icon with the star. Show you here. And so the default account is important because if an order is provisioned, the smart account has been assigned, but no particular virtual account has been specified in that order, it'll all flow into the default account, so it acts as a great buffer. First, we have the general tab. where your clients can go ahead and generate that registration token, so that non-product specific registration token, and register their device to this particular virtual account. And then you'll also see licenses. So this is where we get a lot of questions. What licenses do I have? How many licenses do I have? Where do they come from? What orders are they from particularly? And so the first thing that I do want to share with you is that it's really great to have show license transaction details enabled, because it gives you access to so much more information at a glance versus having to go ahead and click through all of the different areas. And so if you don't see this option, or your client's smart account smart licensing portal looks like this, then that's just something that they have to go ahead and click in the preferences tab, and they can go ahead and enable that for their smart account. So having this enabled will show you more information like the source of the licenses that I was talking about. So these licenses in particular were a pack conversion, whereas with some of the other licenses, it'll show the order number, so where that came from, if it was a la carte, as well as if it was a manual entry as well. It'll show you more information like the particular customer. So if you have a client that has separate locations, oftentimes this is helpful just to know which licenses go into which virtual account. And then more information like the SKU, the family of the license, quantity, as well as start and end date. So if it is a term-based license, you'll see the start date and end date. But if it is a forever license or a perpetual license, you'll be able to see that it says expires never. And then in terms of moving and transferring licenses, that's pretty easy to do as well. You'll go into actions transfer. There are a couple different ways to do that, so reach out to us for the best way based on your particular scenario. And the other thing that I find really helpful as well is if you have a client that's looking for a particular order or a particular license, and maybe they only have a couple virtual accounts and everything's really messy. If they do have this show license transaction enabled, that gives them access to the advanced search tab, and they can search based on product family or order number, and it really helps with that auditing and the troubleshooting process. We also have the product instances tab, which will show all of the product instances that are registered and connected to the smart licensing portal. And if you click on this, it'll give you more information like serial number, as well as registration date, last contact date, and whether or not it's using reserved licenses. This is also helpful when you're trying to find out exactly what licenses a particular device is using, because maybe you or your client went ahead and configured a device, but maybe didn't configure it properly, and it's not consuming all of the licenses that should be. You see that there are a couple licenses in the account that are being unused. You can go ahead and check here and see exactly which licenses it's using, as well as the quantity of those licenses as well. So it's not always on a one-to-one basis. So this is a great place to go ahead and check that out. And then with a lot of our portals, we have built-in event logs, transaction histories, activity tabs, etc. And so here you'll be able to see all the specifics for this virtual account. If you want to focus a little bit more on the smart account as a whole, you'll go ahead and click into the activity tab. You also have the ability to convert to smart licensing. If you have seen one of our sessions, you'll see that we have this really big slide in terms of what's the best way to convert licenses. You can do it here. You can do it on the traditional licensing portal. Sometimes it's initiated on the device using device-led conversion. So go ahead and reach out to us. We can share that slide with you as well. But I like to use this area just because it gives the least amount of errors, because all of the packs and the licenses that are shown here have eligible licenses or an eligible equivalent to go ahead and convert to. The reports tab is also one of my favorite tabs as well. And so this comes in handy, especially if you're dealing with license insufficiencies or out of compliance. So if you want to find out more information in terms of licenses, it's great to go ahead and run those reports. So if I get a question from a client and they say, oh, I have this license insufficiency alert, but I know I have 50 extra licenses hanging around somewhere else and they can't seem to find it. They can go here, run a report, and it'll show them a summary of all of the licenses that they have in their smart account. And then as well, up below, it'll break it down by particular virtual account. And that's where they can say, oh, these 50 licenses are in this other virtual account that I don't typically use. And so anything that has a negative amount here in the summary will tell you and tell your client that they don't actually have those licenses available in their smart account. So maybe it's licenses that haven't been provisioned yet, or maybe they just actually accidentally configured their device to utilize more licenses or a different license tier than what they initially purchased. And then aside from the licenses with the product instances, you can run reports there as well. The thing that I find the most helpful, so when you run a report on the product instances tab, it pretty much just gives you quantities, but if you go ahead and export it to CSV, it'll give you more information, like the license transaction details shows you in the inventory tab. So it'll tell you serial number, it'll tell you the license types that it's using, as well as the quantities and more information like the registration date, as well as last connectivity date. So I typically like to export my product reports out. Preferences tab is great for your clients to go ahead and customize their smart account a little bit more, as well as their daily event summary. And so if they like to pay attention a little bit more to the alerts and focus on specific alerts, they have the opportunity to enable that and choose exactly which alerts they want to go ahead and focus on. Any clients with on-prem accounts, you'll know the synchronization portion is really important. And so you'll go ahead and click into here to find out more information on the particular on-prem account, as well as the synchronization and the version. So if you have clients that are getting some devices that run SLP, so Smart Licensing Using Policy, you'll know that the SSM on-prem that they have requires a certain version type to go ahead and support SLP devices as well. So it's always a good reminder to go ahead and get them to upgrade their SSM on-prem to the newest version. And then the activity tab, again, checks out license transactions, will give you good information in terms of auditing and troubleshooting if you want to check out devices as well, the event log. And then the last thing I do want to cover here with the Smart Licensing portal is this area called SL product details. So not a lot of people know about this, but it helps with having your clients be able to figure out some of the questions that they have on their own. So I always like to share it because a lot of my clients that I work with like to do a little bit of digging before they ask their questions just to see if they can figure out the answers first. So if you click into SL product details, it'll give you more information based on particular product families. So product families, as well as the current licensing that it uses, if it's hybrid, so it was using traditional, but also has the ability to convert to smart licensing, you'll be able to see that here. And then if you keep scrolling to the right, you'll be able to see information like the configuration guides and more product specific information. And then you'll also be able to see when it comes to compliance and your devices. A lot of devices don't have any feature functionality changes. You'll see things like NA or syslog warnings only, but for other particular product families, they do have feature and functionality changes. And so this is a great place to know, to go to be able to know exactly what would happen to a device if it was, not registered properly or out of compliance due to licensing. So I like to use this just to share more information on particular products. And then aside from the portal demo, some last information about our teams, as well as some of the other licensing teams within the ecosystem. Again, we have our team, which is the HTLA team, High Touch Licensing Experience team. We are a free, no-cost team to clients. We are an internal team, so although we do external engagements with our clients, we do require that an internal Cisco member go ahead and create that request. So again, we can work with clients, we can work with partners, etc. So you can go ahead and raise a request at our SharePoint page, or if you only have a one-off question, go ahead and reach out to us in our chat space as well. We have some amazing resources there, even outside of our team. And we find that once folks have help with their client scenarios, they like to share what they've learned as well as best practices there as well. So it's a great place to go if you want to learn a little bit more about licensing products, or just have a specific question that you'd like to ask. Aside from our team, you also have the licensing support teams. And so anyone within an active CCOID can go ahead and create a licensing support team or licensing support case using that support case manager. And they have 3 levels there as well. You'll typically get routed to the lowest level, and then based on what you have questions about or the topic is, they'll go ahead and route you to the correct team there to go ahead and help your client as well as yourself. We also have Ask Licensing, which is a bot that is available only to a select few as of right now. I know that they're currently continuing to roll that out. We don't have a specific timeline, so hopefully it'll get to you soon, but if you don't have access to it, I don't know what to say. Hopefully, essentially, hopefully you'll get access to it as well. But again, you can always utilize us as great resources. And reach out to me if you have specific questions. If I don't know the answer, I'll go ahead and reach out to some of my colleagues or some other teams as well, just to see if I can figure out the answer for you. We also have licensing comms. And so essentially those are how-to videos. I've used them quite a few times to share with clients as well as other Cisco internals. It's a great place to go if you have specific questions about things like alerts or things like running reports on licenses, running reports on product instances. So that's a great resource to share with your clients as well. We also have our PAS team, so our product activation specialist team. And they are the experts when it comes to the enterprise agreement and the enterprise agreement workspace. And so we work really collaboratively with them as well. And so if you have any specific EA questions that are a little bit more complex or, have true forward questions, they work closely with the true forward team as well. So this is just a brief look at some of the licensing teams within our ecosystem. And then our testimonials. It's always fun talking about our testimonials. I know I shared about our customer satisfaction scores earlier in the beginning. And as you can see here, we work with very varied types of Cisco internal members. So we work with system architects and CSEs. Again, this is an exhausted list. But if you haven't worked with us before, chances are you have a colleague that has, or someone who knows someone who's worked with our team as well. So go ahead and check out the testimonials when you have a chance, just to see how we can help you and your clients. And then this is our site. So you'll get more information at the end of our webinar. I know I breezed through a lot of information. We didn't have a lot of time, so I just want to make sure that I gave you all the information that I could within this session. But you'll get access to the slides. You'll get access to the recording as well. And so if you would like to raise a request with us, if you go to our SharePoint page, you can go ahead and raise a request, and an HCLE member will reach out to you within 24 hours. But again, oftentimes much sooner than that. You'll be able to read a little bit more about our team, check out things like our scope, see exactly how we can help you, how we can help your clients as well. Join our chat space. Our chat space has a lot of resources there. I know I've talked pretty extensively about all of that. So I don't want to repeat myself a little bit too much, but it's a great place to go. If you just want to learn a little bit more about licensing, maybe you don't even have specific questions. You just want to learn from other folks as well, because situations and scenarios do come up, I think, cyclically. So it's a great place to go to learn more. And then also feedback and testimonials. We're always looking to improve. We're always looking to make our sessions better as well as our client engagements better. So we thrive on feedback, good and bad, just because it makes us better as a team and helps our clients in general. So I believe that is the end. I don't know if we have additional time for questions. So if we do, we might be able to take a couple. If not, definitely check out our chat space. And thank you again for joining. We're excited to be able to do some of these additional sessions in the future. I know this one really had a lot of reiterating information from our last session. We did want to reiterate some of the introductory information just because we know a lot of you attending the session were new, but I know some of our future sessions will build upon other sessions as well, and it'll get a little bit more complex. So please bear with us, but we're excited to have you again, as well as do these knowledge transfers.
Thank you, Catherine. We do have quite a few questions unanswered. I just want to put it out there that Catherine and I will be making a note of the questions that we weren't able to get to and ensure that we reach out to you within a business day. Because we have a few minutes now, we will go ahead and address some of those. The first question is, what delivery or account role is most appropriate to submit a request to HTLE team? In other words, the delivery team ought to liaise with which role if a customer mentions they have an issue. So great question. And perhaps this was before Catherine went through that slide explaining different teams in the licensing ecosystem. So if your customer needs support, with a specific problem, which could be a technical issue, which needs a resolution, then your best bet would be licensing support. But if it's more around adopting licensing tools and portals, and and for them to become well acquainted with the portals, they need training and demos and best practices and stuff like these, then we are the right team. The next question for you, Catherine, is what does it mean when you see license provisioned or provision pending in CCW for a deal?
So license provision pending. So oftentimes in the ordering process, I know is a little complex, but the license provisioning typically tied with device estimations date of ship. And so what that means is that the license actually hasn't been deposited in the smart account just yet. I think my screen went black. I'm not sure if it was the same for all of you, so I'll go ahead and stop sharing. But that typically means that the licenses haven't gone into the smart account yet. And if they are in the smart account, they'll have a little alert that says awaiting start date. So what I'd recommend is going ahead and checking the CSSM, so that Smart Licensing Portal, seeing if those licenses are there just yet. And if they're not, they're just in that pending state, so they're waiting to go ahead and be provisioned. If you have the devices already, and I've come across scenarios where clients have actually received their devices a little ahead of schedule, or it initially was pushed back, but then they got it before the pushback date. Then their licenses have, a little bit of time needing to be caught up. We can also reach out to the customer support teams, specifically licensing operations, to help get that pushed through as well. So I know ordering is a little bit complicated, but hopefully that helps clarify a little bit in terms of your question.
Thanks, Catherine. Because we have a couple of minutes left, I just wanted to remind everybody that I've posted the link to submit the webinar feedback. Let us know how you like this session and the topics that you'd like us to cover in our upcoming sessions, so we are able to curate something that works best for you and prepares you to have conversations around these with your customers and teams. We'd really appreciate your feedback there. And with that, I will move to the next question. I think we have time for one more question. With the new smart licensing using policy, can the customer still purchase perpetual licenses?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I think it probably depends on product family. So with smart licensing using policy, it's only applicable to certain product families. So I know the Cat9Ks are part of SLP. I think the Nexus, I don't know if it's the 7Ks or the 9Ks, they're also part of SLP. So I think we would have to check on an individual basis. But for those that do have perpetual licenses, I know that they're still reporting recommended. So it's a little different, and I don't want to get too much into the details because I know the topic gets a little complicated fast, but essentially your clients would be reporting license usage instead of that check-in. But we will be covering SLP on a future topic. So I would say park that for now. We'll do a little bit more research in terms of that perpetual or that permanent license and get back to you in terms of that session.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. We have quite a few sessions lined up already, and we'll love your inputs to curate those. But for now, because we are on time, thank you very much. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and looking forward to seeing you during our next webinar.
Job, Catherine.
Oh, thanks. My screen is completely frozen, so I couldn't tell if everything was still going.
People are dropping
Thanks,
off.
everyone.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So the recording that you shared, was that, are we still recording now or?
I don't know.